Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode: 1967 Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana security guards and missile launch officers reported disc-shaped or glowing red objects hovering directly over active nuclear launch control facilities. The 1967 incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana remains one of the most famous cases in the history of ufology, centered on the claim that an unidentified intelligence interacted with and potentially disabled United States nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. The incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base on March 16, 1967, remains one of the most significant and debated events in UAP history, primarily due to the direct link between unidentified aerial phenomena and the temporary compromise of United States nuclear capabilities. On the morning of March 16, 1967, Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana was the site of a high-security operation involving Echo Flight, a complex of 10 Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missiles ICBMs. These missiles were housed in reinforced underground silos and managed by launch officers stationed in deep, hardened bunkers. Robert Salas, who was a 26-year-old Air Force lieutenant and one of these launch officers, was on duty in the underground capsule when the event unfolded. According to Salas's first-hand testimony, the incident progressed through several rapid high-stress phases. Salas began receiving frantic phone calls from the security guards stationed on the surface. The guards reported seeing strange lights moving in the sky at impossible speeds. They described these objects making sudden, sharp 90-degree turns, reversing course instantly and hovering silently, maneuvers that were not consistent with any aircraft of the era. The situation reached a critical point when a guard called back, clearly frightened, to report a pulsating red-orange glowing object hovering directly above the facility's front gate. Salas noted that the guard was visibly shaken. During this communication, the guard reported an injury or emergency at his location before being forced to end the call abruptly. Almost immediately following the reports of the red object, alarms sounded inside the command capsule. The control system indicators for all 10 Minuteman missiles simultaneously switched from green operational strategic alert to red no-go shutdown. Following the incident, Salas's commander communicated with the base command post and was informed that a similar phenomenon had occurred at another missile flight site, often cited as November Flight, suggesting the event was not isolated to a single location. It took maintenance crews approximately 24 hours to fully restore the missiles to operational status. The failure was particularly confounding because the systems were specifically hardened against electromagnetic interference and external tampering. While Air Force records confirm that all 10 missiles in Echo Flight lost strategic alert status at 8:45 on March 16, 1967, the official reports from that time period disproved the rumors of UFO involvement, often attributing such failures to technical glitches, or, in later decades, suggesting the possibility of classified testing, such as electromagnetic pulse simulators occurring in the vicinity. For decades, the Malmstrom incident was shrouded in secrecy, with witnesses like Salas claiming they were ordered to maintain silence. However, since the 1990s, Salas and other veterans have been instrumental in pushing for disclosure. Their testimony has reached the highest levels of government, including being presented during congressional hearings, and to the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, ARO, keeping the event at the center of the ongoing national conversation regarding UAPs and national security. The Malmstrom Air Force Base incident of 1967 serves as the ultimate clash of narratives in the field of UAP research. The case is defined by a deep divide between those who believe the event was a genuine encounter with an advanced, possibly non-human intelligence, and those who maintain it was a mundane, if misunderstood, series of technical and atmospheric events. Here is an in-depth look at these conflicting perspectives. For Robert Salas and several other veterans who have come forward over the decades, the Malmstrom incident was not a malfunction but a demonstration. Witnesses argue that the precision of the event, 10 missiles in a single flight going down almost simultaneously, is statistically impossible for a random mechanical failure. They contend that the guidance systems of the Minuteman missiles were hardened against power surges and electromagnetic interference, precisely to prevent such occurrences. Many witnesses, including Salas, have publicly expressed the belief that the presence of these objects over nuclear facilities is a deliberate monitoring or warning mission. They theorize that a non-human intelligence is signaling its awareness of, and perhaps its concern over, humanity's ability to destroy itself through nuclear warfare. Witnesses point to the fact that they were debriefed immediately after the event and told to treat it as a matter of national security, ordered never to speak of it again. They argue that this forced silence is evidence of a government cover-up, rather than a simple mechanical glitch. The government's perspective has evolved, but it has historically resisted the extraterrestrial explanation. At the time of the event, the Air Force conducted an internal review and concluded that there was no evidence that the missile's loss of alert status was caused by external intelligence. The official findings were classified, and for years the Air Force simply denied any UFO connection. In a notable update to the official record, recent government reports and reviews by offices like the ARO have revisited these Cold War incidents. By citing declassified documentation, the Pentagon has attempted to provide a rational explanation that avoids the UAP narrative. The suggestion that electromagnetic pulse (EMP) simulators were being tested in the region is a central pillar of this modern debunking. Proponents of this view argue that during the Cold War, secret tests were frequent and local personnel would have had no way of knowing their own government was testing equipment that could interfere with nearby electronics. Skeptics within the scientific and journalistic community have long sought to bridge the gap between witness testimony and physical reality through mundane explanations. A frequent skeptical argument for UFO sightings in the 1960s, particularly those involving red glowing lights, is the planet Mars or other bright stars planets. Skeptics argue that observers, especially those who are sleep-deprived or under high psychological stress, can fall victim to the autokinetic effect, where a stationary point of light in a dark field appears to dance, move, or dart around. Skeptics emphasize that the Minuteman missile system was first-generation ICBM technology. It was notoriously temperamental. They argue that flaming or going down was a known, albeit frustrating, occurrence for these systems. Skeptics suggest that witnesses may be conflating two distinct events: a known system failure, which happened frequently, and a separate, unrelated sighting of lights in the sky, creating a causal link that never existed. Skeptics often cite social contagion in military units. Once one person reported seeing a red light or a disk, other guards, already on edge due to the cold, isolation, and nuclear stakes, likely projected that same imagery onto their own experiences, leading to a group consensus that solidified over the years into a legendary, but factually flawed, story. The heart of the debate remains unsolvable because the evidence is largely subjective. If the witnesses are right, we have been visited by a force capable of neutralizing our most powerful weapons without firing a shot. If the skeptics and the 2025 Pentagon report are right, then the incident is a classic example of human error, the volatility of experimental technology, and the way the human mind can construct a myth out of unrelated occurrences during moments of extreme Cold War tension. The missiles did go offline. The disagreement lies entirely in the why question that continues to drive the debate in Washington today. The legacy of the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident is not merely one of history, but a primary engine for the modern U.S. government disclosure movement. What began as a classified military glitch in 1967 has evolved into a centerpiece of the legislative push for transparency regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP. For nearly 3 decades, the veterans of the 1967 incident remained largely silent. Bound by the strictures of national security oaths and the fear of losing their military pensions or professional reputations, the dam finally broke in the mid-1990s. As the Cold War receded into history, figures like Robert Salas, a former Air Force captain, began to speak out. Salas provided a credible, high-level witness account that transformed the narrative from crazy stories told by fringe researchers to official accounts from decorated officers. The Malmstrom veterans eventually formed a coalition with other military personnel who had experienced similar incidents. They argued that if the government was hiding the reality of UAPs, it was doing so at the expense of national security and the public's right to know about potential threats to nuclear command and control systems. The incident moved from specialized UFO books and niche documentaries into the mainstream political conversation through a process of sustained pressure. Films like UFOs and Nukes, based on the research of Robert Hastings, utilized the Malmstrom incident to argue that the UFO phenomenon is not a benign mystery but a strategic concern for nuclear powers. This popularized the idea that UAPs have a specific interest in nuclear facilities worldwide. By the late 2010s, the consistent pressure from witnesses and researchers made the Malmstrom incident impossible for Congress to ignore. The narrative was no longer about little green men, but about unauthorized aerial objects operating over nuclear-armed facilities, a phrasing that forces the Department of Defense to address it as a national security issue rather than a paranormal one. The incident achieved its highest level of legitimacy during the May 17, 2022 U.S. House Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation hearing. During this hearing, the first of its kind in over 50 years, lawmakers specifically brought up the 1967 Malmstrom events. They demanded to know if the Pentagon had investigated these incidents and whether there was any evidence of UAPs interfering with the U.S. nuclear deterrent. Pentagon officials, such as then Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence Scott Bray, offered a measured response, acknowledging that while they were aware of reports of UAPs near nuclear sites, they had not definitively linked them to the missile shutdowns. This was a critical pivot. The government no longer dismissed the existence of the phenomenon, even if it refused to confirm the extraordinary cause. Why it remains the gold standard, the Malmstrom incident remains the most significant case for several reasons. Unlike many UAP reports that rely on civilian or blurred camera footage, Malmstrom involves multiple professional military witnesses, launch officers, security guards, and maintenance crews, who held high-level security clearances. The incident was corroborated by technical logs, the strategic alert status shifts that are a matter of public and historical record. The intersection of UAPs and nuclear weaponry is the most sensitive area of defense. By focusing on Malmstrom, advocates have effectively cornered the Pentagon into addressing the UAP issue as a matter of vital strategic necessity. Today, the Malmstrom incident serves as the benchmark for any discussion on UAP and nuclear security. Whenever a new Pentagon report is released, researchers and journalists look immediately to see how it handles the 1967 incident. It has become a litmus test for disclosure. If the government cannot provide a credible, non-anomalous explanation for why 10 nuclear missiles shut down in the presence of an unidentified object, the public skepticism of the official narrative remains high. Ultimately, Malmstrom transformed a secret Cold War embarrassment into a potent political weapon, fueling the ongoing debate over what the U.S. government knows, what it is hiding, and why it is so hesitant to officially acknowledge an intelligence that has been pacing our nuclear silos for over half a century. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archived Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown, Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.